Hello, my name is Vanessa Garcia. Today I will be explaining the techniques of aseptic and non-aseptic. These techniques are really important and they must be always done in every clinical procedure. These techniques are really important because they're done in order to prevent any contamination in the environment of any microorganisms, which is any viruses, any bacteria, any pathogens, especially in a procedure that a patient is having any surgery, or it doesn't even have to be a surgery, but it has to be sterilized or non-sterilized, but it has to be done for the patient's safety and also for the healthcare providers to keep a safe environment from any microorganisms. These techniques must always be done in every procedure just to keep the patient's safety and also the providers. Techniques are used in order to prevent any contamination of any microorganism. They could either be transferred from staff to patient or from patient to staff, and that's why these techniques are important to be used before or after any procedure. Aseptic is a technique which is used in invasive procedures like any surgeries, for example, when placing a pacemaker to a patient, because everything needs to be sterilized. The table, everything, the gloves, the gowns, everything that is necessary for a surgery needs to be sterilized. Non-aseptic is anything that is not sterilized. You could use just regular gloves, the gowns. It could also, like also the X-ray techs, it could be the aprons. It doesn't have to be sterilized because it's non-invasive. Anything non-invasive, it could be anything like buried enemas. In order to keep the patients safe, the health, it needs to be used correctly. These techniques, because it could prevent the transfer of any microorganisms. Before any procedure, you will need to wash your hands properly. Hand washing is the first line of defense against any infectious diseases, so it must always be done before any procedure. Non-aseptic techniques is a procedure that does not need a sterilization. It doesn't need to have any area that is sterilized as for any surgeries. The equipment don't need to be set up like that to be sterilized because it's for a non-invasive procedure. An example of a procedure that does not need it is an NG tube, which is placed shows it here in the nose, and it goes all the way to the stomach. It's also done to remove any fluids in the stomach to feed the patient. This non-aseptic procedure, it means that it is not resistant to any bacteria or viruses because it's not done sterilized. And this procedure does not need to enter sterile cavity. Procedures that do not need a sterile cavity field or are like NG tubes, also like bearing enemas, does not need a sterilization to be done. For example, when preparing a patient or checking a patient, I would always suggest to always use gloves, just in case, to prevent any contamination for your safety and also for the patient. Aseptic technique, or is also called non-touch technique, is a standardized technique which is used during any clinical procedures, which it prevents any contamination of microorganisms or pathogens in the environment. This is done in a place that it will be sterilized for any surgeries, which is anything that is an invasive procedure. The goal for this is to eliminate infections, microorganisms, or pathogens to be transferred either to the patient or from the staff to the patient or the patient to the staff. It's always done for the safety of the patient, especially if the patient is in a
invasive procedure, like any surgery, like it could be any pacemakers, anything that is invasive. Equipments needed for this aseptic technique will be like the procedure table. The procedure table needs to be cleaned before and after for every procedure. Other equipments needed for this are like surgical scrubs, sterile masks, and sterile gloves, sterile supplies. When preparing the equipment, you will need to necessarily like check the equipment to see if they're not damaged, and they don't have any cuts. You have to carefully open the packages, not to touch them, even though you have washed your hands already. But it's for any precautions for safety and in order to prevent the transferring of any microorganisms. Remember that anything that is sterile is a process that kills or removes all microorganisms to be transferred in the environment.